Hello, I'm back.
Okay, I know it's been a couple months, but life happened and I got really busy and had some things happen that was beyond my control, so I didn't have time to catch up on my reviews. So we'll save the Shakespeare for another day. But I've still been reading, so I have a few books ready to go for some reviewing. So let's just hop right into it with Ready Player One. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so if you play video games a lot, you have probably heard about this book, Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. So the basic plot is it's a post-apocalyptic future, of course, but instead of having people trying to survive in this world, video games have become so advanced that there is this virtual world called the OASIS that people spend more time in to escape the realities of the post-apocalyptic world. The OASIS is is a system that's to free to sign up for, basically. Anyone can sign up for it. The only thing that costs money usually are the actual headsets and all of that, and the plugging in and blah, blah, blah. So most people who can't afford that don't get to participate in it. But there's an educational boost where you can get a free headset and gloves if you're using it for school purposes, which allows you to plug into the OASIS system and allows you to explore while also getting an education, because schools have mainly become virtual. There's still real schools, but most of it has become all virtual, and lives have basically kind of become dependent on this OASIS system. And it's an interesting idea. It's one that's it has probably been explored before, but not to the extent of really hammering in the fact that this was created by a man who was a huge fan of video games in the 80s. And 80s, basically, the guy who created the OASIS system is an 80s buff nerd, freak out, obsessed. And so a lot of that is reflected in the system, including that a lot of the worlds are based off of 80s worlds from like 80s films. Like there's a Star Wars world, there's a Star Trek world, there's a D&D world, there's all that kind of stuff. There's Back to the Future, pretty much you can name any movie from the 80s, and there's a world dedicated to it that you can go and live in and, basically live out the stories in the films, which is a cool idea for anyone who is, like, really into that stuff. And there's also worlds based off of classic video games from the 80s. My mind is blanking right now because there's so many games from the 80s and 90s and all of that. But it's such a cool idea, and anyone who's into video games is probably like, oh, this book is like what we want the world to be. But the basic plot revolves around one character, Wade Watts. And he's the protagonist of the book, and he comes from a poor family. His parents are, I believe, dead, and he's being taken care of by, oh gosh, I can't remember, his aunt in the slums. And he escapes to the OASIS because he got a free headset because he goes to school in the OASIS virtually. And he's a huge fan of the gentleman who created the OASIS. Now you're probably wondering, well, what kind of a story is this? Just a kid going into virtual reality? Well, no. The gentleman who created the OASIS, James Donovan Halliday, kind of, when he died, a program began in the OASIS, kind of an online scavenger hunt, because everyone was like wondering what'll happen when he dies, who's going to take over the OASIS, oh my gosh, they could become a multi-billion trillionaire. And that question was answered after his death when a program launched saying basically there's going to be a contest in the OASIS. There are 3 keys hidden throughout the OASIS, but you have to find them in a particular order. And once you find all the keys, then for each key, there's a gate. So once you find a key, you have to find the gate that it goes with and complete a trial. And then at the end of 3 gates, there is Halliday's egg. And that is, no one really knows what it is, but they all kind of know that it has something to do with handing the Oasis over to whoever finds it. So whoever finds the egg becomes, the heir of the Oasis. So there's a huge following of fans and people who are trying to find this egg. And Halliday only left one clue, a limerick that gives a clue to where the first key is. And when you find the key will give you a clue as to where the first gate is. So, the people who are obsessed with finding it, who spend most of their time on the Oasis searching for these keys, are called Gunters. And Wade is a Gunter, a full-blown, obsessed Gunter. And he has other friends that are Gunters, mainly one, he has one main friend who is a Gunter, and his name is H, spelled A-E-C-H, but pronounced H. And they're friends, they hang out, they play video games online, everything is online still. They play video games, they watch movies, and they consider all of this research into finding out where these keys are, because Halliday, it's obvious that since Halliday was obsessed with 80s films and video games, that the eggs and the keys are going to have something to do with it. So, the beginning of the story comes when Wade figures out where the key is, and he figures out where the first gate is, and he runs off to solve it, and then and he's the first one to solve it. There is another character who comes in who has actually already found the key in the gate, but she hasn't been able to complete the trial. Her name is Artemis. And Wade meets her when he goes to the first gate to take on the first trial. And and of course, he beats it, and he starts the ball rolling for everyone else, because there's a scoreboard that lets the entire world know when the first person solves it. And of course Artemis is pissed because she's already, found everything. She just hadn't been able to beat the first trial. And so she becomes the second person to solve it, and then people catch up afterwards. So that's the beginning of the story. That starts the conflict in the story. The antagonist is the company that kind of owns the Oasis, but not really. Like, Halliday still had kept full control from them, but they are the company that, builds the technology, and they want full control of the Oasis, so they can charge people for the headsets, they can charge people to log in, even though that's free usually, and they are IOI, which stands for, what does it stand for? Innovative Online Industries, IOI. And they have specialists and professionals and brainiacs working on the keys and the gates, trying to find them too, so that they can gain control of the Oasis and, of course, start making money off of it and all that. So the race is on for Wade and his Gunter friends, Artemis and H, and the other Gunters, to beat IOI to the egg and save the Oasis and keep it free for the masses. Whew. A lot of information there. And I highly enjoyed this story. I love video games, so this was right up my alley. I remember a lot of these films and these video games that they were talking about. Mainly the films. A lot of the video games were past my time, were before my time, but I remembered a few of them that I did actually get to play, and it was very well done how the author integrated everything into these systems and made it such a believable world that it could possibly exist, the online world. And the Oasis was great. I mean, who wouldn't want to live in a virtual world where you could do anything? You can fly, you can go off and fight monsters, and go play in your favorite video games for real and go and like star in the actual films from the 80s that you watched as children. Like, it's a great idea and everyone loves it. And it's really well written, and it really tugs on the nostalgic strings a lot. But if there were some things I had to complain about and that kind of grinded my gears a little bit, it was that we didn't get to see the real world as much as I think I wanted. It wasn't terribly distracting that we didn't get to see it, but like the few brief glances and like views that we got into the real world, this post-apocalyptic world, were very interesting, and I wanted to know more about it. Like the slums that Wade comes from. They're well, you can see from the cover, kind of. They're trailers built on top of each other. They're like apartments built up with trailers, and that's an amazing idea, an amazing visual, and it begs the question, like, what other things have they had to do because of this apocalyptic world and all this? And they talked about, like, how everything was just like the systems, like IOI, if you fall behind on your bills for whatever reason, then you become kind of an indentured. No, I'm not going to say that. But you basically become their slave, and you have to go in and work, trying to pay off your debts, but you can never actually pay off your debts, so you're stuck there. Like, they put clips in your ears so they can track you, and you never can leave the building, and you have to stay there, and you become, like, customer service. Like, customer service is a form of jail. And it's like, so why would you, like, it's so crazy, because, it's, no one, I don't know how to describe it. It was just such a brilliant idea that when I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, customer service are people who couldn't pay their bills and they're forced to do this? Oh, it's horrible. So, like, that was such a cool idea, and I wanted to see more of the real world. The OASIS is great, and such a great, like, fantasy to want to reach that point, maybe sometime in the future, but, like, these ideas that he has for the outside world, I wanted to read more, I wanted to hear more about it, and I just wanted to see more, because it was, like, I wanted to see where he could have taken it, because, like, the slum ideas, and the customer service being people who, like, were in debt to the company, I wanted to see more. Bottom line, I wanted to see more. And then another thing that I guess was kind of a negative for me, and I know a lot of people are going to horribly disagree with me on this, but it didn't bug me. I actually really enjoyed that this is how he wrote it, but, like, he really showed Wade's kind of, not descent into madness, but his descent into, like, giving up the outside world. He eventually breaks away from his aunt, and he is able to, like, he becomes wealthy, because the OASIS, money you earn in the OASIS is actual money that you can spend in the real world, because it's become such a major part of life, and it's become such kind of a where you go instead of just living your life in the real world. Like, you go to the OASIS, you can have a job in the OASIS, the money you earn in your job in the OASIS is money that you can actually spend and, like, purchase apartments, cars, food, everything. And since he becomes kind of famous, he gets money, and he uses it to kind of move away from his aunt and get his own life, and, well, there's more to it than that, but I don't want to spoil anything. And he buys his own apartment, and he completely cuts himself off from the outside world, from the real world. Like, he spends almost the entire day in the OASIS. The only time he comes out is to eat, sleep, and to exercise so that his body doesn't atrophy. And, like, that's all he does. That is all he does. He goes into the OASIS and he just lives there. And you're thinking, oh, he must be doing that so he can search nonstop for the eggs. And for the egg. And at first, yes, that's why he does it. But then he starts kind of hitting a wall with some of the clues and not being able to solve it. So he just kind of lives in the OASIS, and he just becomes so involved in it that he doesn't see the outside world. And I liked and I hated that part, just because I liked it because it really shows kind of the dangers of this world. I know this is going to sound weird coming from someone who would love to live in this world, but I mean, it's the truth. Like, people are escaping the real world and going into the Oasis instead of trying to fix the real world. The Oasis becomes such an escape that it's more acceptable as real life than the actual real world that these people are living in. And it's such an interesting balance of, I want to live in this world, but it's a horrible world to live in, really, because it's apocalyptic. It's, there's things that have happened that destroyed the world. And I guess it kind of ties into me wanting to read more about the real world, but it makes me a little sad because I feel like we are going, well, for some people they are more into this, where these video game worlds are more home to them than the real world, and that could be due to anything. I'm not saying that it's horrible, because it could be a good thing. Maybe them escaping bullying, could be them escaping from bad homes, it could be them escaping from things that are happening in their lives that they need just a moment of reprieve from, and video games help them. And I'm 100% behind that. But this world shows the danger of that, where, you get so involved in living in this world, and it's so happy, and you love it, and, it makes you so happy to be there. I forget all my worries. That the real world suffers. Buildings are falling apart. People don't take care of anything. The world is dying. And it's like a catch-22. It's a catch-22. Everyone, the Oasis is great, but the real world is suffering because everyone's living there instead of, acknowledging that they need to fix the real world. And, it's the author's choice to do the fiction like that, and I think it's great. Like I said, I love the worlds. I love the Oasis, and I love the real world. I wish we could have had more of the real world, but I understand he was trying to show that everyone's kind of living in the Oasis more than the real world, and that's become so much part of their life that the real world has just kind of become not real anymore. So the Oasis, which is a completely fabricated virtual world, has become more of the actual accepted, this is how life is, this is where we get our money, this is work, this is pleasure, this is everything. The real world, we just have to come back and eat and sleep, and then we can go right back into this beautiful world that makes us happy, and so take that for what you will. I don't know if you got any real judgment based off of those, but I guess I would have to say that it all comes to, I wanted to see more of the real world, but I appreciated this look into this idea of abandoning the real world for something that is more desirable, and the real world suffers for it. So, that was that. Now, for the characters, Wade Watts, our protagonist, whose username on the Oasis is Parzival, with a Z, Parzival. We basically get to see him grow up. He was a teenage boy who got famous really quick when he passed the first gate, passed the first trial. And we get to see him kind of grow up as he goes through this process of becoming well-known, and then going through the dangers of the IOI, trying to beat him to the egg. But we also get to see him kind of do he becomes too much for his friends, he doesn't hang out with them as much, he becomes so obsessed with something that he's not able to focus on the important things. He starts to try to have a romance with Artemis, and that kind of takes up a big chunk of the book, and then they both realize, we can't do this. She more than him. She kind of is the one that breaks it off more, and then he's devastated by it, and he kind of realizes, we haven't been focusing on the egg at all. We're letting IOI get a lead on us because we having relationships. So it was interesting. It's good that he brings in the relationships between the characters. H, I love H. H is a great character. He's hilarious. He's a good best friend. that, they never actually have met face to face. Like, they've only known each other through the OASIS, and he's hilarious. He's like the top Gunter that everyone knows, and he's really mad when Wade beats him to the first gate, and he's like, "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me you got a lead and you beat it, and da 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 da? Why did I have to find out through the scoreboard?" But there's also a mutual respect between them, that they don't want each other to give them the answers. Like, he's like, "Well, I was gonna tell you, but I got distracted, but I wasn't gonna like tell you where it was." He's like, "Well, I know, but you gotta tell me that you were solving it and giving me a hint." So they have like a mutual respect because they're such great friends, and they really respect each other as Gunters. And like, all three of them, Artemis, H, and Parseval, Wade, Parseval, their relationships together are great, and like, you really believe that they are these, like, these kids who are just trying to save something that they really love. It originally starts out as, "Oh, it's the dream to own the OASIS, become a multi-billion trillionaire." But then once they realize the dangers of the IOI taking over, they all kind of come together, not by helping each other. Like, they help each other, but they don't, like, give the answers away. Like, "Oh, it's here's what you have to do." Like, they help each other in the way that people who respect each other do, who want to see each other grow stronger. The main antagonist, like I said, is IOI I can't ever remember, Innovative Online Industries. They're the company that's in trouble, but the main antagonist is the head of the company, Nolan Sorrento, who does threaten Wade. He threatens Wade, saying, like, you should join us and give us the information and tell us how to do it, and we'll pay you tons of money. And when Wade turns them down, they become a little dangerous, and they like are threatening his life in the real world. They're threatening his friends in the real world, and there's this whole thing where they have to combat this. It's a great parallel, because they have to fight them in the OASIS as well as watching out for them in the real world. But when you're in the OASIS, you can't watch out in the real world. So there's like this danger of make sure you're in a safe place before you go into the OASIS, or else they could sneak up on you and get you. So that was an interesting. I mean, it's been done before, kind of like The Matrix, and I'm not gonna get into that because that opens up a whole can of worms. This isn't about movies, this is about books. But like, the idea of you're not safe anywhere in this place where you have become so conditioned to know that it's safe. This is the happy world. You can do anything you want, and then there's danger in that world of them killing your avatar or your user. And then there's the danger of them in the real world, finding where you live and coming and, attacking you. So it keeps it interesting in that sense. And there are, like, it takes place over a couple years. Like, the book isn't really fast because it takes time to solve these puzzles and riddles. And, like, it was very well paced. There was maybe one point in the book where it kind of slowed down for me, but I think it was supposed to, kind of to represent. I mean, it slowed down, but it was also a little bit of the story slowed down, but as you're reading it, you have this like urgency in the back of your mind, like, you gotta do it before they find it. Oh no, don't forget why you're doing this. But overall, I really enjoyed this book. Like, the ideas were great, and like, the world that he created was amazing. And any gamer will tell you, like, we want that world. We want to live in the OASIS. Why isn't this a thing yet? And I'm torn, because I would love to have something like the OASIS become something real, and that, this world that we can all meet. Like, it's just like the internet, you can talk to people across the country, but this is more of like, you are there, like, it's a bigger community than the internet is, in a way, and there's all these amazing places you can go, amazing things you can do, and there's always something to do. Like, no one can explore the entire OASIS in their lifetime because it's constantly growing and constantly changing. And so there's that part of me that really wants to go there and have that be a thing, but then there's another part of me that's thinking, but we can't do that, because as much as that would be great, we need to stay focused in reality and not let it overtake our lives. And I'm getting philosophical in this, but I have to, because it goes back to the point of, like, they've become so hooked and they just love the Oasis so much that the real world has suffered and is just dying. And it's a sad thing, because, you know, the Oasis is just, it's technology, it's wires and coding and numbers and all this, and as great as it is, it's like you can't survive on just that. And they show that when they have to come out, and they're so depressed and sad when they have to come out of the Oasis. Like, there are people who set up things in their rigs for the Oasis where they never have to come out. Like, they have, like, feeding tubes that feed them while they're playing, and they can sleep in the Oasis and sleep in the real world and get actual sleep. And it's just like, why would you? No! So it shows the negatives as well as the positives, and overall, as much as we want it to be something that's real, it's kind of good that it's not. As a gamer, it just kills my soul to say that. What else can I talk about? The conflict, like I said, is really good between the company and the Gunters, the Egg Hunters, and Wade, Artemis, H, and the introduction of characters that are that help our protagonist, and the ones that don't help him, that are you know, fighting him and all that, are great. Like, there's never too much information coming at you. The nostalgic moments of, like, seeing the video games and the movies written out and all that, and seeing what they have to do, and being like, oh man, I couldn't do that, I should go back and watch all these movies. It's great. And I guess I'll leave off with talking about the resolution, the ending of the book. I'm not going to give anything away, the spoilers or anything, but it was great, like, the build up to it was great. It took some time to get to it, but once it started building, you're like, yes, and I enjoyed the ending. I enjoyed everything that happened. I was happy with it. Like, I wouldn't have changed anything. I mean, it was... you know, there's always the thing where how are you going to end the books are going to be predictable or not predictable, and depending on what you choose, it'll be good or bad. I think Ernest Cline picked a good ending. I think it was well written, and I think it was, you know, I think everyone liked it. I don't know, I haven't met someone who's read the book who hasn't been like, oh, I hated how it ended, it was so predictable, blah. But, yeah, I mean, I would highly recommend this book if you love video games, or if you just love 80s. Anything 80s, like, read this book, it's great. I will say I'm very curious to see what his next book will be. I know he has another book coming out, or I don't know if it's already out, but he has another one coming out. I don't believe it continues this story. I believe it's a completely different story in a different universe, and I'm excited to read it. So my scoring for this book, gosh, I'm gonna have to give it, I'll give it an 8 out of 10. Just because of the things I mentioned before. I would have loved to have seen more of the real world, just to see his take on the post-apocalyptic world, and to see how everyone's devotion to the Oasis affected the real world. So 8 out of 10 from me. Yeah, check it out if you love video games, or if you just want a really good story, or if you don't understand why people love video games, or, like, whatever, I don't care. Like, I'd say check it out. A good book, well written. Great characters, wonderful story, and yeah, go video games, woo! So I guess that's it for me, and like I said, sorry I've been MIA for the past 2 months. Things happen, life happens, but I do have a few more books coming up that I'm ready and eager to review, so I will see you next time on Wiggy Reviews. Bye-bye.